Greetings guys and gals, my name is Thad and today I will show you why you should always consider castling if you are a beginner in chess and how easy it can go wrong if you don't do it. Now please understand that I only show you this on the example of one opening of the, I don't know, like 500,000 openings that there are, but I chose this one because, you know, it illustrates the fact pretty well that things can go southwards very fast if you don't castle and if you don't get your king to safety as fast as possible. So here we go, we are opening with e4, e5, knight c3, so the Vienna game is on the board, and bishop to b5, already attacking that knight, and white just says, you know what, this knight is protected so I don't have to worry about anything, I'll just develop with knight f3, and after that black can just play knight f6, also developing, and white just says, okay, then I just develop further and also try to attack you with bishop b5. Black decides to castle here, and white just says, okay, you know what, I don't even need to castle, I'll just develop even further with pawn to d3. And this is basically where the trouble begins, because of course black immediately starts to attack that bishop on b5 with just pawn c6. This bishop has to move, and already you can make your first mistake if you consider playing bishop c4. c4 is a mistake because black just pushes d5, and already this bishop has to move back, because if you decide to take here, just pawn takes on e5, pawn takes on e5, and again this bishop is under attack, so it has to move back, and after that black just plays d4, and this knight is pinned. It cannot move as the bishop is eyeing the king, so basically there's nothing much to do here. Even if you now decide to block, let's say with bishop d2, this knight is coming off the board, and you can even trade the bishops off, because now black is just basically up a piece and will most likely win the game. But let's say you didn't play c4, but rather a4 to save your bishop, but black can just completely ignore that bishop in a4 and just very calmly play something like d5, striking in the center, very aggressive, and it is basically threatening to take that pawn to d4, and we have already seen that that is a very nasty attack, so we need to defend this c3 square somehow. So let's just say bishop c2, defending this c3 square, and now black just opens up the side even more with a5, and there's only one move that you could play now that doesn't completely lose the game. I give you a few seconds to find it. So if you decided to castle now, this is actually a mistake, because now you're just going to lose the bishop. Black is just going to play b5, and if you try to you know, keep the bishop from the action, let's say b3, then black is just going to attack with his pawns, and this bishop is basically completely lost. The only thing you could try is like capturing on d5, but after that, you know, just bishop d2, and after you traded this bishop, this knight is basically coming off the board. Black is up a piece and in a very advantageous position here. So I think this shows very well why as a beginner you should definitely prioritize you know, king safety over just random attacking. I mean, basically after black castles you can also go for this, but you definitely need to know what you're doing, and castling in this case is definitely a little bit safer. And just castling in this position is completely fine. After that you don't need to be that afraid of this bishop, because this knight can always move, it cannot be pinned, as you know the king is not on e1 anymore, and it is actually very safe in this corner here. Alright, and we are back in this position, and let's just imagine that black was the one who actually didn't want to castle. So, well, we're not completely ready yet. There we go. And let's just imagine that black did not want to castle and see how that goes. It's a little bit different, but bear with me here. So instead of castling, black immediately starts to attack the bishop, but this time not with c6. Let's just pretend, okay, maybe he wants to, you know, keep that space for the knight. So he goes a6, attacking the bishop, so we have to move the bishop back. In this case, c4 of course is completely fine, as there's no threat of d4. So we are going to play bishop c4, and let's imagine, okay, just black wants to just keep attacking. By the way, d5 doesn't work here anymore, because of course this knight can now move, so we can easily just take, and you know, it's completely useless to take with the queen here, because of course just bishops take and black just lost the queen, so not really a threat right here. So let's just say black goes after the bishop with pawn b5, attacking the bishop, but after the bishop just moves to b3, it is completely safe there. Okay, let's just say black is a very aggressive player, so he immediately captures on c3, then we are just going to capture his bishop with pawn c3, And after that, feel free to find the best move. I will give you a couple of seconds. Alright, so if you chose to castle right now, that is a very good move. It would be my recommended move for, beginner players, maybe even for advanced players. It is not the only good move possible, but it definitely, saves the king, and it is very safe to play. So after that you can just continue developing. You have nothing to fear with your king safe in the corner. Now there's also one move in this position that black absolutely shouldn't play, and that is knight takes on e4, just thinking that this pawn is free, because this pawn is absolutely not free, as now you can just play bishop d5, threatening the rook and the knight. So if black just tries to block this with pawn to c6, you can just take the knight, and if he moves the knight, let's say knight f6, then of course you're just taking the rook and you upper whole rook, and you're basically just winning this game. But let's say black doesn't play the absolute worst move, but is also not a fan of, castling. So he just continues to be very aggressive, focusing that pawn and playing d5. Now, the problem with this is that even d5 cannot be considered a good move anymore, because white can just capture this, and after that the pawn just basically blocks this knight from coming into the game, it blocks this bishop from coming into the game. But black of course has the option of capturing this pawn on d5 with his knight, and the problem here is that white has this very beautiful move knight to e5, capturing this pawn on e5 and attacking the f7 square. This is what you have to see, because if the knight, let's say play anything, and if the knight ever gets to that square, of course it is forking the rook and the queen, so you're going to lose one of them, and you're just going to have a terrible time. And again, the only way to properly defend against this would be to castle, but if black still does not decide to castle, f7 is definitely coming. You could try to defend it with something like, let's say, queen to e7, pinning that knight. Now this knight can't move anymore, and even if black takes this knight, then white just has to play something like rook e1, of course pinning the queen. The queen cannot move anymore because it's on the same line as the king. So yeah, after queen takes, and white is up a whole queen, and the game is of course completely lost for black. Okay, so those were two very good examples, at least in my opinion, why you should always consider castling as a beginner, just to get your king to safety, to make the game less complicated, because you're always giving your opponent a reason to attack you, and you have to really think about defensive strategies to defend against anything when your king is just stuck there in the center for the whole game. Anyway, so that's it for today. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope I see you next time. Until then, have a nice day, have a nice night, and of course, as always, have a nice time.